the road to currency. And so what I strive to teach my clients is how to follow the necessary path to get to currency. Now, most people think currency is just money. And money is actually low hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing to get once you discover your gifts, your talents, your abilities, and recognize that there are gaps out there. So that's low hanging fruit. But
Gotcha.
other currency would consist of ideas, information, trust,
Right.
spirit, relationships, right? There's this concept called social capital.
Social capital, indeed.
Social capital, right? So you may not have a dime in your pocket, but because you have social capital, you have relationships, then it's how do I convert that social capital into financial capital? So that's where I come in to teach my clients how to do that.
Welcome to the I Learn, Therefore I Can podcast, an iRise performance consulting production where we explore the dynamic world of performance through a learning and development lens with a focus on achieving excellence. I'm your host, Lonnie Gregory, and I'm inspired by those of you that wish to be better at what you've been asked to do.
Today, we are thrilled to have Rob Y.B. Youngblood with us. Rob Y.B. Youngblood is a proud husband, father of 2 beautiful teenage daughters, an active member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and a graduate of the greatest HBCU in the nation, Virginia Union University. As the founder and president of YB Credibility PR, YB works with authors, business owners, corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, and professional speakers to leverage public relations as a strategy for enhancing their visibility, credibility, and profitability. YB is a 2-time best-selling author, award-winning speaker, public relations consultant, visionary business coach, and top business networking voice. Known as the LinkedIn locksmith, he has an incredible ability to unlock the power of LinkedIn for his clients, enabling them to increase their influence, impact, and income. Since 2016, he has coached over 1,000 professionals to leverage LinkedIn, creating currency through collaboration. In addition to his coaching and consulting work, YB delivers keynote speeches and workshop presentations for alumni networks, chambers of commerce, and industry associations. His main topics include collaboration creates currency, networking to increase net worth, and leveraging LinkedIn for business growth. He is the author of Collaboration Creates Currency, a book that highlights his expertise in creating credibility in the marketplace through collaboration and public relations. YB's unique gifts lie in his ability to connect, promote, and support individuals seeking clarity, confidence, and connections. His extensive experience spans nearly 2 decades in community relations, customer relationship management, and social networking. He teaches his clients and partners how to leverage LinkedIn to build profitable relationships and generate revenue. Join us as we dive into YB's journey, exploring his insights on public relations, personal branding, professional networking, and the transformative power of collaboration. Connect with Rob Y.B. Youngblood on LinkedIn to learn more about his work and the incredible impact he's making.
Hello, friends. You just listened to that extremely wonderful introduction introducing our very special guest, Rob Y.B. Youngblood, a fellow New Yorker. I discovered that after meeting him. We're going to have a great conversation. Friends, before we actually get started, I do need to tell you how Rob and I met, quote unquote. He's prolific on LinkedIn. I think you know that. Some of you are on this session because you know Rob and you want to hear what he has to say on this platform. But I've been seeing his notice in this pass by my screen like every day. And I'm like, I have to understand who this brother is. So I finally decided to reach out. He was gracious enough to accept me. We had a couple of conversations. He had a goal to be on a lot more podcasts. And obviously I had a goal to start a podcast. So it kind of worked out. So friends, this is our real first long-term conversation, right? We've had some mini conversations, Rob, but this is the first one. So friends, you're invited to our very first conversation with Rob Y.B. Youngblood. And Rob, thank you so much for joining the show, man. I really appreciate you. So how you doing today?
My pleasure. First of all, my pleasure. I really appreciate any time I get an opportunity to come into someone else's house. Right? I consider this to be your house, and mama and grandma taught us well. So take your feet and take your shoes off when you come to people's house. Don't act a fool. when you come into other people's house. So I consider it an honor and a privilege to be here. But I'm doing great. I'm blessed by the best. Getting better by the minute. It is. Can you believe that it's already July?
July.
I mean, man, the year is flying by.
Flying.
It's flying.
And it's hot.
Oh, who you telling? I mean, it's everywhere across the country, no matter where you are. I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I was driving from my house to maybe about 20 minutes away. And as I'm driving, it was 100 degrees. Then it was 101 degrees. Then it was 99 degrees. I said, wait a minute. And then I had to turn back around, and it was 99 degrees. It was 103. I said, man, that's crazy. I guess I need to stay out of this little pocket right here, whatever that was.
Getting warm. I wonder what the lesson is to learn about global warming. I don't think there are many deniers left, but this is not that type of show.
Oh yeah, no question. We just know it's hot.
We know it's hot.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm not too far away from you. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. Love Virginia, great town. Richmond, rather, great town. In fact, there's a spot down there, Pocahontas State Park.
Yep.
I go riding my bicycle down there all the time. I take a trip just to go ride down there. So I know the neighborhood, beautiful country.
Oh yeah, no question.
Yeah. So friends, like I said, Rob and I just met, and I wanted to meet him very intentionally because I could just see him on LinkedIn everywhere I went. Rob's doing something, he's saying something, he's got guests, he's got something going on. So I had to understand him. But when I stopped to really look at it and I saw that, like, the title, your mantra, your presence, collaboration and currency. I think that's a fascinating thing to put together. How did you come up with that concept?
Yeah, so the collaboration creates currency concept was inspired by the #1 motivational speaker in the world, Dr. Eric Thomas, otherwise known as E.T. the hip hop preacher. I was influenced by him. I was impacted by him. And I heard him say something to a group of us during a coaching session when he said that everything that he was able to accomplish, he did it because of collaboration. Right? He said, I never really did anything by myself. And when you think about the journey that he went through from being born to a teenage mother, not knowing who his real father was, once he found out that guy he thought was his father wasn't his father, he left home, became homeless, lived in abandoned buildings, ate out of trash cans, went from high school dropout to GED recipient to PhD, right? So you think about his journey and everything he's done to become a multi-million dollar speaker. The title, Collaboration Creates Currency, it reflects how people like himself or people like myself or others who have overcome adversity, whether it was poverty or just dealing with trauma, how they're able to do it as a result of a collective. A connection, and also through collaboration. So I knew it was an easy win. Plus, the people who were in the book with me, my co-authors, each and every one of them, I was able to meet as a result of the relationship and impact of Dr. Eric Thomas. And so that book is more than a book; it's become a movement, and it's turned into a network as well.
That's fascinating. That's outstanding. Because there is a relationship between those two words, collaboration and currency, that's been exposed in the learning and development area.
Right.
In fact, Harvard Business Review, they wrote an article about, the good managers, the good leaders who are able to collaborate repeatedly, successfully within an organization, very intentionally to achieve a particular outcome. They are the new currency of that organization. Their value skyrockets. And the same thing happens in learning. Folks that come together to learn together, to apply together, collaborate better, and they increase their value to the organization as well. Right. So, what you're promoting, what you're saying, and how you're living makes perfect sense to me. It's a wonderful thing. I hope it resonates with the folks that are listening as well. But before we go a little bit further down the path of what you do and how you do it and why you do it, and because you are prolific out there in the world, you got profiles, you got posts, you got websites. I'm wondering if there's something you could tell us, Rob, about yourself that I can't figure out by looking at your profile or reading a resume or reading your book or attending one of your workshops. What are you willing to share with us?
Oh man, so I love to sing. I'm a songbird. And going deeper than that, if you and I took a 12-hour trip, let's say you drove into Richmond and we jumped in one car and we drove from Richmond to, let's say, Tampa, Florida, right? And I put on YouTube or Spotify and put let's say the Stevie Wonder channel.
Right?
I guarantee you 80% of the songs that come on, I could sing them.
You can sing them.
I can sing them. My kids sometimes get annoyed, but what I'm finding out now is that my daughters are starting to sing the songs that they hear me listen to when I drive. So when my wife drives, it's gospel.
Right.
You know, it's spiritual music. When I drive, it's R&B. You know, just a little bit of rap because I got to be careful. Some of the lyrics I don't want my daughters to be listening to. But I'm big on R&B. I love to sing, and that's because I grew up in a single parent home. My mom it was my mom and I, and she would always play the radio. So coming up in New
Right.
York, you got WBLS, you got Kiss
Exactly.
FM, you know, Frankie Crocker, you know, for the older folks that's listening, you know, that was born where it says 19 before the year, right? So it's like 19 something. So some people might be listening in like 2000. It's like, what you talking about? But I would always listen to the radio. So I'm the type of person that if I hear a song more than 3 or 4 times, I'll start picking it up, and then it becomes a part of my spirit. And so I'm a bit of a songbird. I guess I could share that. That's definitely not on my LinkedIn profile. You can't find that on there.
That's cool. I certainly wouldn't have picked that, right? It wouldn't have showed up on the roulette wheel.
Yeah, definitely,
So
definitely.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So perhaps you notice you can look at my background. It's got a musical theme.
yeah.
I'm also a musician. That was my first love. Trained classically. And you know, I'm from New York, like you. I went to
That's right.
school in Harlem,
Yeah.
high school of music and art in Harlem. Studied, classical trumpet. Ended up playing bass guitar. Played professionally.
Hmm.
Was in a reggae band, but they kicked me out because I couldn't grow dreadlocks. But anyway, man, that's really cool to know.
Yeah.
So do you create music? You write music? You do anything like that, or just sing along with the radio?
Yeah, I sing along with the radio. You know, nothing original. I mean, when I was in high school, I used to. Now I wouldn't say battle rap. That'd be lying. Some people listen say, "Come on, man, you didn't do no battle rap." But I would freestyle a little bit. But I just love to sing. You know, I will bring certain songs back, and once again, what some of my favorite artists, Stevie Wonder, Ron Isley. I love. Matter of fact, I got to a place where when I saw Ron Isley grow that gray beard, I said, man, my goal is I want to look like Ron Isley. But I don't have that gene, so like just like you can't grow dreads, for whatever reason I'm not growing beards. But yeah, I love to sing, and so a wise person once said, "Do you sing because you're happy, or are
Happy.
you happy because you sing?" And I just think, when you have the joy of the Lord in your spirit, that thing is just going it's going to come out of you. And I love to sing also because it's therapeutic.
Right.
My wife and I, we just got back from a phenomenal family trip. We went to a place in Maryland. You might be aware of it. It's called Sandy Cove,
Yes.
which is in northeast Maryland, right off
Yes.
of the Chesapeake. And I remember just reflecting and just singing songs. I put on YouTube and I put on some Stevie Wonder. And Stevie Wonder, I'm saying Stevie Wonder got so many doggone hits. It's like you could listen to it for 12 hours. You probably get 12 hours worth of music from it. And just being able to sing and reflect and to grow from that experience. And so yeah, I don't create any original music, but I like I'll sing. Now my daughters get mad at me because I can whistle very well. So that's my instrument. I can whistle. One of my daughters they
Right.
can't. So it's like how the gene you get 50% of each parent. So like I got two daughters and one of them can whistle, the other one can't whistle. So it's
That's
crazy.
cool.
Yeah,
You know, I think that was worth this conversation right then and there. Just to know you got that musical background. And
yeah,
again, that's encouraging because we work hard at what we do, right?
right,
We
right.
we're very serious. We're studious. We're research intensive. But we have a plan. We're living on purpose.
Right.
And so, we can get on these platforms, then all we see is, this, I'm doing that, this is happening, this is going here. But what you don't know under the hood is that there's a 12-hour car drive with you and your family and the tunes that are going.
Right.
So I think that's important for all of us to see all of us as just folks that can listen to music or be something other than what these platforms would bear witness to.
Right.
But having said that, Rob, you are a worker. You are prolific. You are studious. You do research. You are active. Share a little bit about the motivation behind the work that you do. What purpose is driving this particular effort?
Yeah, I discovered early in life that my gift is my ability to connect, to promote, and help people gain clarity. And so when I discovered what my gifts were, I realized that my gift would make room for me. But I realized also that my purpose is to empower, inspire, and impact people. And so every day of my life, I'm looking for ways to operate in that purpose. I'm a firm believer that there's a God that created us, that gave us a gifts and abilities and a purpose, and that we have to serve in that purpose. Because at the end of the day, when we go back to him, he's going to ask us,
what'd you do?
What'd you do? What'd you do with what I gave you? And why didn't you do what I put on the inside of you to do? And so I'm always reminded of that. And so whenever I want to just relax or chill or just do nothing, I have to remember that, first of all, my future is not promised, and that I have to put in the time today. And so, I'll make time to relax, but I'm always focused on where can I sow seed, where can I reap, and where can I give, as well as how can I work. And so when I do these interviews with people, that's an opportunity to multiply my outreach. I could do something on my own, and the people that I'm possibly connected to will get it, and maybe their people will get it. But if you get on other people's platforms, then it'll multiply your outreach. And that's really what I'm a firm believer of. And so, just operating in that gift every single day, being a connector, being a promoter, and being someone that helps people gain clarity is what I strive to accomplish on a daily basis.
Thank you. I like that, particularly the gaining clarity. What's interesting to me is I espouse, one of my values is to practice what I preach. And even as I know better, sometimes I don't do better. And so to have someone like you in your corner, and I have people in my corner to help me refocus, stay focused, to dial it, to maintain clarity about what I said I was going to do versus what they see me doing. It's so critically important.
Right.
So for you to help people maintain, achieve clarity, that's a blessing in and of itself. So who was it that allowed you to establish clarity, to see clarity, to achieve focus? Tell us about your mentors and the development efforts that you've been through to support your ability to be where you are today, helping the people that you help.
Oh, yeah, there's so many. Once again, I speak about growing up in a single parent home. My father was murdered when I was 2. And so there were a number of people who stood in the gap for me to help me to become the man that I am today. So I don't take full credit for who I am. A lot of times people will say, oh, your mama raised you right. And if I was the old Rob, I'd argue with them, because I'm like, it wasn't just my mom, but I get it. I understand why you would say that. But starting with, my scout leader, when I was a little kid, I had a Boy Scout leader named Edward Lehman, who was a Jewish guy that lived in Riverdale, New York, right? So Riverdale was on the other side of the Bronx. Well, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in High Bridge. So you talk about Harlem. I grew up in Harlem, but he taught us the values of scouting that I still promote today, right? So if you think about values, you think about different laws to live by, right? So when you talk about a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, those are values that were instilled in me at a young age, which then helped me to make decisions that the guys that I was hanging out with on my block they didn't have those values. Some of
Right.
them, right? And
Nene
so,
and them, right? Nene and them.
well, it wasn't Nene, but they had their nicknames. But the point I'm making is that was a person, and then
Yes.
there's a Mr. Hicks, who was the superintendent of the building next to my building, who was the grandfather of a young lady that I was fond of. I wanted to date her, but I had to go through her granddaddy. You know what I'm saying? And so her granddaddy was the first person to hire me. Right? He hired
Wow.
me to sweep the floor in the building and take the trash out, right? And so those different values, so many people. And then when I was on my way to college, it was Emil Roberts and John Staten, who was on the Black College tour. They took us. These were Omega men, right? And so while I didn't become a man of Omega Psi Phi, the men of Omega Psi Phi influenced me, but they weren't active on the campus that I went to. So I ended up becoming an alpha because at the end of the day, the alpha man is the alpha man. You know what I'm saying? For those of you who are members of the Divine Nine Greek letter
Okay.
organization.
Okay.
So there were men who stood in the gap, and there were women as well,
Mm.
but and there's so many, but the point I want to make is that we as individuals, we don't operate in a silo. We operate in a community that if we allow for the community to help mold us, we become a product of the community, and we have a
Indeed.
responsibility to contribute back to that which has contributed to us. And so that's been my
Here,
journey,
here.
my story.
Yeah, growing up, we used to say, and again, I'm from the same hood you're from. Maybe a few years earlier, but the same hood. We used
Yeah.
to say, "Each one, teach one."
That's right. That's
Right.
right. Lift
So
as you climb,
that's it.
you lift as you climb. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, Rob, when we were talking about you, coming to talk, and I shared with you, how I had this platform organized,
Yeah.
16 major topics, and I saw you filling in that category as coach mentor,
Right.
and he was like, "Yeah, that'll work." So, we also understand that those who have been coached are a lot more productive
Mm-hmm.
than those who have not been coached.
Right.
We understand the value of coaching, and we're receiving more data, by the day to
Mm-hmm.
suggest that if you really want to take strides in your developmental efforts, that having a coach of any kind would be instrumental
Yes.
in achieving those outcomes. So, as a coach, Rob, is there a particular philosophy that you have
Mm-hmm.
around coaching that you're sure to use with the people that you work with?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a professional business networking coach. There's other areas that I focus on as well, but I've decided to go deeper in that space because that's been my journey. That's something that comes easy to me, but it's difficult for others. Networking. There's a lot of folks who claim to be, well, there are folks who are introverts, right? It's not so much a claim as the fact that that's what they've discovered, but in their mind, they believe that because they're an introvert that they can't network, and they're
Right.
two different things. So for example, you talked about biking, right? Cycling. Just because a person can run doesn't mean a person has the ability to ride long distance on a bike, right? But how do you begin to cycle? You first have to learn how to get on a bike. Do you know that there's still adults who don't know how to swim?
Yes.
Right? So some people might think, well, because I'm an adult, that I should be able to swim. No, that's a skill that needs to be learned. So similar to biking, similar to swimming, networking is a skill.
Mm.
Now, what I do as a coach is I first help people understand that each and every one of us has a purpose, and we have gifts, and then we have a story.
Mm.
Okay, so those three things, when you understand that you have a purpose, that you have a gift, and you have a story. Now, you may not know how to put the story together, and that's where I come in as a professional business networking coach, because networking first is not about what you can get, even though that's what people think. Let me go out and network. Let me get some business cards. Let me attempt to sell the people that I'm talking to. But true networking is not about what you can get, it's about what you can give.
Here,
But
here.
the only way that you can truly connect is if you can relate. And the only way that you can relate is if you can have a conversation where there's an even exchange of information. Now, this would be a very dull conversation if you did all the talking and I just gave you one word answer.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? So because I'm
Absolutely.
comfortable with who I am, I have a story. I'm willing to share my story. I know who I am. I know the gifts that I bring to the marketplace. I know the results that I've been able to get. I am now able to add value to you and your listeners, but also I put out a beacon when I speak
Mm,
that those who are looking for me but didn't know I existed, they hear that sound, and they're
right.
like, I need to connect with that brother, right? And so, or I'm able to then open up doors for others who are looking for resources. Recently, I decided to adjust my networking strategy in a
Mm,
way that's allowing me to strengthen the current network that I have because I had an epiphany. I realized that while I'm very good at meeting people and connecting with people, that I was terrible at nurturing
mm,
the relationships. Now I can maintain relationships. I have connections that I've, matter of fact, I have one connection that I've been building with this young lady for 40 years, right? That would make me a little bit older than 40, right? So I've been building
yeah.
with her for 40 years. Like we were in first grade together.
Wow.
And she eventually became a client of mine. Why? Because we reconnected, stayed in touch. I identified some gaps that she had. I was able to promote my gift, and she took me on as a coach. And so I say all that to say that that's a skill that needs to be learned and fostered and then mastered over time as you continue
Got
to
you.
apply it. So that's what I do. I would say my main philosophy is this concept of the road to currency,
Mm,
right? The road to currency. And so what I strive to teach my clients is how to follow the necessary path to get to currency. Now, most people think currency is just money, and money is actually low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing to get once you discover your gifts, your talents, your abilities, and recognize that there are gaps out there. So when you take your gift and you apply it to somebody's gap, then you're able to make money. So that's low hanging fruit. But
got you.
other currency would consist of ideas, information, trust,
Right.
spirit, relationships, right? There's this concept called social capital.
Social capital, indeed.
Social capital, right? So you may not have a dime in your pocket, but because you have social capital, you have relationships, then it's how do I convert that social capital into financial capital? So that's where I come in to teach my clients how to do that. And a lot of it has to do with clarity, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has to do with confidence, right?
Like
And
that
then those
idea.
first two lead to the connections, because when you have clarity and confidence, then the confidence will allow you to take different steps, right? It allows you to make different moves. If I wasn't active on the LinkedIn platform due to a lack of clarity or lack of confidence, I doubt if you and I would be having this conversation. But because I have clarity and because I have confidence and because I'm communicating effectively, it allows for me to attract opportunities. And so that's where, as a
So,
coach, being able to help people to develop that framework. And then based on their introvert or extrovert nature, then I can teach them how to network effectively, because my belief is that introverts actually make the best networkers. They
mm.
just have to have a system of operation to work.
So you're absolutely right. You believe it or not, I am an introvert,
Okay.
and decidedly so. I'm also an MBTI practitioner,
Okay.
so
Wonderful.
I
Wonderful.
understand what a real introvert is.
Yes.
And I do have a plan for when I'm going to network.
Hmm.
Because if I don't plan it, it's not going to
Right.
happen.
Right.
And I have a switch like Data on Star Trek.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a switch. I
Yeah.
flip that switch.
Yeah.
I execute that plan. When it's over, I flip the switch off and I go home.
Yeah.
Or I just sit in the car and kind of take it all in.
Right.
So tell me, the typical engagement that you have with an individual,
Hmm.
would you say that folks are like entry level, like really don't network, don't like to network, don't know how to network, or they like intermediate, they have some experience but would like additional confidence and skills, or you fine tuning the accomplished networker, or are you doing all three, right?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of all three, but I put myself in a position to be around those who either struggle with networking or they want to get better at networking, right? And so, for example, I just got into an awesome community called the Black Executive Men Network, and these are corporate brothers, right? You know, these are men who are doing well in their corporate career, but just because I'm excellent in finance doesn't mean I'm great at networking.
Mm.
Right. So I realized that a person that I still can add value to people because a person may lack an understanding of how to go about doing it. And I had one young brother who acknowledged the fact that when he saw me come into the virtual room, I was able to work it masterfully.
Mm.
And for me, it's natural. It's like walking, it's like yawning. It's like this
Right.
natural, and but I recognize that for some people it's a difficult thing. And so I look for people who acknowledge that that's a gap that I have, right? So I'm looking for those who say, YB, I want to go to another level in my business, in my career, in my
Mhm.
relationships. And I recognize that networking is not a strength that I have, but I want to improve. And so I look to attract those individuals. And that's why, I promote myself as a professional business networking coach because, for a lot of people, networking is fake.
Mm.
Or when people think of
Yeah.
networking, they're thinking, "Oh, you just want to get something." And I tell people the truth. I'm a recovering people pleaser, right? Which means that back in the day, I would be afraid to tell you something directly, or I would hide behind something
Mm.
because of fear of how people looked at me. Now it doesn't really matter. I tell people straight up, "You're exactly right. I do want something. I have
Mm.
an agenda. Right?
Gotcha.
I have an agenda."
So does
And
that
I
work?
think, oh,
Does
absolutely. Because at the
okay.
end of the day, if you don't, first of all, if you're in business and you don't have an agenda, you're wasting people's time.
Right. You're not in business if you don't
You,
have an
you you're
agenda.
wasting people's time. Like, so, if you and I say we're gonna meet for 30 minutes, then we meet for 30 minutes. If the conversation goes long, that's great. But we not. I'm like, oh man, my family. I got someplace to go. And so networking allows for you to get to where you want to go with and through people.
Gotcha. So let me pivot here.
Yeah,
And again, friends, Rob and I, we met, we talked a couple times. We're,
yeah,
we're having a conversation, like a
no
real
doubt,
conversation for the
no
first
doubt,
time
no
that
doubt.
you are a witness to. So, Rob, what you just said reminds me of something with respect to what people could or should do with respect to networking. If there was like a critical task or a critical skill that you would say, in order for you to be successful, you must at a minimum do this thing, what would that thing be?
The ability to listen. Yeah, active listening skills is critical in any industry if you want to be successful in leadership. That's why I said that introverts make the best networkers because what do introverts love to do more than anything? They
Listen.
love to listen. They don't want to
Watch.
do much. They don't want to do
You
much
want to
talking. No,
watch.
I don't want to talk. I'm good on that. But then a person who loves to listen but doesn't like to talk, they in their mind they're like, well, I can't be a networker because I don't know what to say. Right. And so that's where having a coach comes in because once you have a framework, then it's not about the type of questions you ask. It's about understanding that whatever question I ask, it creates a space for the other person to do most of the talk, right? So it's kind of like having a mini podcast without the headphones, right? So you talk to people, you get good at asking people questions. They do most of the talking, you do most of the listening, right? And then active is really being able to, let the person know that I heard you.
Right.
Right. So if you
Acknowledge them.
say something, acknowledge it. So, so you from New York too? What part of New York are you from?
Right.
And now I'm quiet again. And you doing all the talking. There's a book out there that really helped me to see the big picture, and that's called How to Win Friends and Influence
Influence
People by
people.
Dale Carnegie. Right?
Absolutely.
Phenomenal book. And it talks about how if you become a phenomenal conversationalist, man, people will fall in love with you. They're going to say, man, this is the best conversation I
Absolutely.
ever had. And you said, listen, you did 90% of the talking. I just listened. So I
And
would
you,
say this. I would say the critical skill for us, even online, right? This might sound strange to most people, but you can actually listen with your eyes, right? So people say, well, that doesn't make any sense. You have ears to listen. No, you can listen with your eyes, because when you read something, you have to ask yourself, what is this person saying when they communicate in the written form? What am I hearing when I read this phrase? And the challenge for some people is they'll read something online and go to guns without seeking clarity first to say, I
exactly.
read this. Can you help me? Can you help me understand what
Absolutely.
this means? And so now you got people clashing when I may have said something that you didn't understand, but because you read it the way that you felt it,
Your
you
filter.
then that's right, your filter, then you go off in a certain way without asking for clarity. And so active listening, I would say, would be the number one skill that I think people should master, especially during times like these.
Absolutely. And again, folks in my particular profession, organizational development consultants, we've been preaching that for years.
Yeah.
And even as I've been preaching it for years, I find deeper and deeper levels of actively listening.
Hmm.
And this ability to decide,
Yeah.
right? Just really decide, all right, I'm going to focus in on what you got to say because it's
Right.
important and I need to understand so I can support you, or we can go off and do other things.
Yeah.
Um, Indeed. So this leads me to a question then, Rob. You've shared then the number one skill that you would like, networkers to master. What is that thing though that you intentionally decided to learn? Therefore, you could go ahead and do something, right? And so, in keeping with the premise of this broadcast,
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned, therefore I can. What is it? What is that thing that you learned? Therefore, you could go ahead and do that thing that you wanted to do.
Yeah. So you talked about the MBTI, right? Or is it MBTI or
Yeah,
MTBI?
MBTI,
MBTI,
Myers
right?
Briggs. Yeah.
So I intentionally began to learn DISC.
Ah.
And I have a coach. Well, when I was in college, I was exposed to DISC through the Inroads organization. So Inroads is a nonprofit organization that develops and places talented, underserved youth and into business and industry and prepares them for corporate and community leadership. And so through my professional development track, I was exposed to DISC.
Mm.
But then in 2004, when I graduated from the greatest HBCU in the nation, Virginia Union University,
Okay.
I had an opportunity to be selected to be a part of a business development team that was connected to the Amway Corporation. And so
Mm.
that was my first entrepreneurial journey. And there was a sales coach who we were exposed to. His name is Joe Peachy, right? Pici, Joe Peachy. And Joe is a phenomenal salesman. Phenomenal salesman. He wrote a book called Sell Naked on the Phone.
Sell.
Phenomenal book. Yeah, Sell Naked on the
Sell
Phone.
naked on the
Very
phone.
catchy,
Okay.
very catchy title. But in the book, half of the book is focused on human dynamics with a focus on DISC and helping sales professionals understand first what their DISC type is, and then understand what the other types are so that when you're communicating in the language of the prospect that you're talking to. So let me give you an example. If I encounter someone who is very direct, right? They're a very high D. That means that they are task driven and fast paced. What that also means is they're direct, they're leaders, they don't need a lot of information, they don't need a lot of fluff, right? Give them the meat, throw away the bones, and just give it to me straight. Well, if I'm dealing with that person, I don't need to travel around the woods and through the bend. Give it to them straight and be direct to the
Fair.
point where it might seem like they're like really cutthroat type people, like they're direct, but that's their personality type. They are direct. Or if I meet someone who is a S, which means that they're supportive, right? They're
Steady.
people oriented, they're steady,
Steady.
they're supportive, but they're slower in pace. So they don't make decisions on their own. They operate in a committee of them. And so if I'm dealing with someone like that in a business or sales capacity, I know that that person is not the one that's making the decision, but it's not I should not approach that person like, well, I'm not going to treat you with the level of respect that you deserve because you're not the decision maker. I tell people, and I learned this from Joe, everyone is a decision maker because they make a decision on whether or not they're going to endorse you
Or
to
not.
the person who can cut the check. It reminds me of
Exactly.
a situation where a person goes to interview with this big wig, right? This VP of an organization, and they come in and they get out of their car, they pour the rest of their coffee out onto the pavement, and
Right.
their breakfast sandwich wrap, they throw it out on the street, and they go into the office building, right? They encounter the receptionist, and they're very rude to the receptionist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because their thing is, I'm only here to meet the VP, right? The decision maker. And so they don't realize that their actions are being viewed. So they get in, they do very well, they wow the VP, and then they go home. Couple of days pass, sales guy calls up the VP and they want to know, hey, how's everything progressing? How do you feel about us moving forward? And the VP's like, we're not moving forward.
Right.
And the salesman is confused. Like, I thought we kicked it off. He said, well, first of all, you don't know this, but when you were getting out of your car, I saw you dump the coffee on the pavement. I saw you take the breakfast wrap and throw it out on the floor. So that's the first thing. And then you came and you engaged my receptionist. And you know what? I asked my receptionist what they thought about you. And they said I wouldn't move forward with them. And I trust my receptionist because my
Well,
receptionist has been with me for several years. So what we have to take from that story is that, number one, you never know who's watching you.
here.
And number two, you want to treat everyone that you encounter with the level of respect that they deserve because you don't know if they're going to be called upon to endorse you. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
that's just so by having an understanding of this, but then it went to another level when I became a part of Eric Thomas's community, and he took the disc and took it to another level with the flight assessment.
Ah, yes.
Okay, so he created the VT. He and his team put together the flight assessment, which takes this, but it centralizes it, right? Because most people, they'll say, well, I'm a D, or I'm an I, or I'm an S, I'm a C. But with the flight assessment, you're a combination of all four. Even for the disc, you're a combination of all
That's
four.
right.
But
That's right.
when people understand the flight assessment, they start to understand it in a much more personal way, right? So with the flight assessment, the person who's the D is the pilot. The person who's the I is the flight attendant. The person who's the S is the folks that are helping out in on the grounds crew, right? And the person that's the C is
The
air traffic
engineers,
control.
air
They're the
traffic
air traffic
control.
control. So
Yeah, that
so
makes
when you
sense.
understand that and you look at it from that perspective, all four are critical to a passenger getting from point A to point B.
Point B.
If all you had was a pilot, you probably have a stinky plane because the folks that are on the ground maintenance, they're not taking the stuff off the plane, right? You have some very disgruntled passengers because
Passengers.
if you don't have a flight attendant, that we it's hot in here. We need some food. Like, who do we talk to? Well, the pilot ain't talking to nobody because the pilot shuts the door and their focus is on getting their people from
How
point A
about
to
that?
point
How
B.
about that?
So when we understand this whole concept of the flight assessment, Then for us, as we understand who we are, then we understand how do we communicate with other people. And that's where the whole active listening comes from. Because once I identify a certain trait that you have, I'm going to start responding accordingly to see if that's really what you are, or
Absolutely.
it could be situational. And so that's something that I intentionally learned and began to pursue, so that I can not only improve my ability to be who Rob Youngblood was created to be, but so that I can relate to more people in the work that I do as a coach, as a consultant, as a speaker, and as a two-time author.
Wow. So I don't know if you could see, but y'all can see this grin on my face. This grin's been on my face since he started talking. And friends, I tell you, we couldn't have made this up. I don't know. Rob, are you aware that I am a disc practitioner?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's part of my
I believe you
practice.
have it on your LinkedIn profile, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so for you to spotlight and isolate disc as something to intentionally learn and
Mm-hmm.
understand so that you can be more supportive of your clients in them achieving their aspirations, it just warms my heart. More importantly, I'm also engaged in a campaign to get disc out to more people.
Awesome.
I call it the gift of disc.
Mm.
And my thing is, because not every organization sponsors disc or offers gifts.
Right.
The assessment itself, it costs what it costs, but it only costs me a couple hours of my time to go share this thing with folks.
Absolutely.
So I'm on a mission to get more people introduced to disc, so they can understand exactly what you shared.
Yeah.
And I'm calling it the gift of disc. And when I say my organization, we're calling it the gift of this because we do believe it's a gift.
Right.
A very simple thing to know, to understand, to utilize, and to be aware of, and to make better types of decisions with how you're going to collaborate, right?
Yes.
And increase the currency of your collaboration.
Yes. Yes.
All right, I got it.
Yes. It's all connected, right? It's all tied in. And that's where you want people to be able to walk away with that greater understanding. As a coach, if you need people to be with you forever, you're doing something wrong. I think it's important that you coach people to a place where they become self-sufficient, and then they go find someone else that can help take them to the next level, right? And so for me, I love dealing with people that are just getting started or just need a boost, right? If they're experts in their craft, I might not be the best person for them. And so even for me, I can find my niche, or I can find my place. And that way I don't have to feel like I'm not able to be successful in my business, because I know that there are people that are always getting started in a specific industry where there's a requirement to engage people, right? So whether it's insurance, whether it's financial services, whether they start in their own business, just because you have knowledge doesn't mean you have the ability to go out and engage people and attract people. And that's what I look to bring to the marketplace.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you communicate this ideal of the gift of currency, of collaboration as currency, as something that young adults, like teenagers, can learn, can understand, can be introduced to? Can we go there and get it down a couple levels?
Yeah, I think it's important that we do that, but I think we do it in the framework of helping people understand the importance of relationship building, right? So I promote my book, Collaboration Creates Currency, as a financial literacy tool. And the reason why, now we don't talk money in the book, right? Other than, the fact that one of the co-authors talks about how he was a struggling insurance salesman and started to tap into his gift. And as a result of something happening to him, I won't give it all away because I want to encourage people to read the book, but he was able to attract the number one motivational speaker in the world. He went from 0 to 40 clients in 90 days because of one connection, right? And so, but what I want people to understand is that before we start talking about money and debt and wealth, we have to teach people how to build relationships.
Gotcha.
And so people are building relationships as little tots. You know what I'm saying? Like I told you, I've connected with a young lady 40 years ago,
Right.
first grade. You know, back then we used to have a line partner and have to hold hands. And she was the one I had to hold her hand, right? And so,
That's
and
right.
we went from first grade to third grade and then transitioned to Catholic school and graduated the same year, eighth grade. So but those relationships can be nurtured and developed. And so, yes, that is a conversation. But then along with that, you know, before we even get to collaboration, we got to start talking to the students about clarity.
Mm.
Who are you? What is your gift? What are your gaps? What are your goals? You know, what helping people, because I think if we start there, then as they start to develop, then they'll start making different decisions. Right. But my target, I love talking to college students. I love talking to recent college graduates, because it
Gotcha.
is at that time, right? They have their degree, they're excited, but then the real world hits them. And it's like, okay, well, what do I do with this degree? Because the misconception is that just because you have a degree, that now you're going to be in the money. And the problem is people are not taught that you don't attract opportunities, but through people. So yeah, you may have gotten a 4.0 GPA, you may have done very well in school, but if you didn't engage different people, you're going to miss out, because you're going to need an opportunity, and opportunity comes through people. I tell folks that just recently graduated from college, if they're struggling looking for employment, I ask them, are you active or connected to your alumni association?
Right.
And they look at me like, no, I'm not.
No.
You're
But
missing out,
okay.
because
Right. Right.
it's through that active association that you connect with one person. That one person could connect you to 20 people if you build the right connection, right?
Right.
So that's where collaboration currency comes from, in terms of what we're striving to do. Like, we're looking to break the cycle of poverty and build wealth in individuals, one connection at a time. And when we think about wealth, it's not just monetary. It's having people understand their self-worth, their value. And once they understand that, then they can start to give their gift away, which is a
Right.
form of sowing seed, which then produces fruit and a harvest that people can then eat off of.
Outstanding. Love the metaphors, and we all understand those because they're
Yeah,
real. They
yeah.
create the images in our minds that we can latch onto
Mm-hmm.
and have
Yeah.
something to work through. One last question, Rob, if you
Yeah,
don't
shoot.
mind.
Yeah, shoot. This is a great conversation, by the way.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like
We
we're
would
sitting
too.
over. I feel like we're sitting over, a couple drinks and just, getting to know each other.
Exactly. Exactly. One question though, Rob,
Yeah.
is there something I didn't ask you that you'd like to share? You know, about what you do, how you do it, why, etc. Around that periphery, or if you could ask and answer a question of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
what would that be?
Man, you hit me with that's a curveball, man. So it's kind of like I'm podcasting myself, right? I'm talking to
Yeah,
myself.
exactly.
I'll tackle both. Let me tackle both if that's okay. So
Cool. Yeah, thank you.
I would say the question the question I would ask myself is, Rob, what what will it take for you to remain consistent? Because while yes, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, there are some times that I start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. I kind of know the answer, but I'll have to continuously remind myself. And I think the answer would be, keep your eyes on your why. Like, why are you doing this? And is the why important for you to be able to do the work? I have a mom who is in her mid 70s right now, right? And so, as your parents get older, you get older. It's like life. You start asking yourself different life questions.
Indeed.
And one of those questions is, if something were to happen to her, would you be prepared to take over? Right? If something were to happen to your wife, would you be prepared to take over? Right? And some people might think, man, that's kind of morbid. But in the world that we live in, You have to be prepared. Eric Thomas says something so profound. He says, it's not the thing that breaks you, right? So cancer, divorce, job loss, it's not those things that break you. It's the fact that you wasn't prepared for it. And so somebody said, well, how can I prepare for death? By waking up and saying, this might be my last day.
Amen.
By waking up and saying, this might be my mom's last day, right? And so no different than when a professional team plays ball, like with a football or basketball, the coach has to prepare for every scenario.
Right.
Right. I was watching, I think it was Auburn versus what was the game that there was Auburn versus what's the other team? It'll come to me in a minute, but
Yeah.
but the game was tied. And some of y'all that's listening, you probably remember this, but the game was tied, right? And so the opposing team decided to kick the ball for a possible field goal. And they didn't get it. But the other team was prepared and they had somebody in the backfield to catch the ball. And this dude ran it in for a touchdown. 100+ yards, he ran it in, right? Why? Because the coaches prepared for that particular scenario. They're like, okay, there are certain amount of yards away.
That's right.
We got a 50-50 shot. He's either gonna make it or he's gonna miss it. If he makes it, it's a wrap. If he misses it, you're in the backfield to catch the ball and make sure you haul tail and don't get caught. You feel what I'm saying? And so that's,
Right.
if you think about it from that perspective, and that's the value of having a coach, because sometimes people are so close to their situation, they can't even think of other scenarios until someone comes in and asks the magical question. Have you considered? Have you considered? Have you considered, right? Instead of telling somebody this is what you should do, because that's how you lose friends and push people away, right? So how to win friends and influence people, that's how you lose friends and disassociate from people, is you go ahead and you start telling people what they need to do.
Right.
I had a situation recently where somebody came on my Facebook post and was telling me what I should do. You should take this down. I'm like, first of all, who are you to tell me what to post on my platform?
Right.
Right. If he would have came to me and say, hey, Rob, have you considered that your post might spark some negative feelings?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. That approach, it works. So have you considered, right? And then I would say one last thing that you would want to know about me is that I'm extremely compassionate, right? I'm a compassionate connector. That compassion is what drives me to do what I do, because I remember where I came from.
Yeah, you mentioned Mr. Epstein, the guy from Riverdale.
Oh, no. You're talking about I know you're talking about Edward Lehman.
Mr. Lehman.
Yeah, Edward Lehman.
I was impressed you remembered his name.
Because he impacted my life. But the reason why I remember his name is because I'm also a Rotarian, right? I'm a member of Rotary International.
See?
And so because I'm a speaker, I'm constantly reflecting. And so when I stepped into this room, I was the only African American in the room. African American male, and African American, period. And so for some people, especially for brothers, they may be intimidated by that. I'm not intimidated by that. Why? Because I was influenced by Edward Lehman. So when I walked in, I didn't see a bunch of older white guys that was there. I saw a bunch of Edward Lehmans.
Right.
So now I can be Rob YB Youngblood in the midst of Edward Lehman's. Now, Edward Lehman has passed away. But what I had to realize was that if I could have that relationship with him, then it's possible that I could have a relationship with them.
Right.
And I think it's important that when we have perspective like that, then we eliminate the intimidation
Biases.
factor, right? So,
Okay.
but because most people are only intimidated because of how they think. Other people may not be thinking that. And the only
Exactly.
way you know how people think is when you hear the what? Words come out of their mouth. That's the number one indication of how people think is what they say out of their mouth. And so
How
until
about
they've
that?
said something that, well, he looked at me a certain way. Okay, well, he looked at you, but you might have had your collar might be popped up, and that's why he's looking at you. But you thinking he looking at you, or you
Right.
looking at me because I'm black? It's like, bro, relax.
Right. 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 Dude.
So those will be the answers to those things. I hope that made some sense. I kind of felt like I was rambling a little bit.
Nah, man, it made sense to me.
Good,
Fortunately, we get to listen to it over and over again.
love it, love
Hey,
it.
but Rob, YB, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your passions, your interests, your expertise
Mhm.
around collaboration, creating currency. Friends, if you're not familiar with YB, you need to get on to LinkedIn, check him out. He's doing something every day. I think you will hear from him, you will understand him, and maybe you or someone you know would benefit from some of his time. I certainly have benefited from this conversation. So Rob, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
One last question.
Yeah,
Will you
shoot.
come back and talk to me again about something?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't. I can only count this once in my 100, my run to 100. But
Okay.
at the end of the day, listen. I love there are some platforms that I get invited to come back on, and so I definitely am open. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity for you to let me in your house. Prayerfully, just by your response, I guess I have permission to come back. So
You do.
I didn't mess up too much in your space, but yes, I'm definitely open to coming back and looking forward to it.
Outstanding. Rob, I appreciate you. Be well, my brother. Thank
Be
you.
the same. Be encouraged.
All right. Peace. That concludes this episode of I Learn, Therefore I Can, an iRise Consulting Performance podcast. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling better about being better at what I was asked to do. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. And thanks for learning. Because learning matters and performance counts. Be well.